Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for part 4 of our Change Your Mind, Change Your Life series. So we have been through the last 3 weeks. We have spent a great deal of time focusing on how important mindset is to create the life that you want. The first week we spent a lot of time focusing on the idea of manifestation, that we can use our thoughts to manifest things in the outside world. So we talked a lot about Albert Einstein and the theory that a third-party observer can change something like an atom into an actual thing. And we talked about the mechanics of how that works. We also spent some time talking about like the law of attraction, and then we went into a great deal of time last week about the stories we tell ourselves. The stories of our minds become the stories of our lives. Last week we spent a ton of time just focusing on the words that we say to ourselves, because the one person we talk to all day, every day is ourselves. And unfortunately, we don't necessarily tell ourselves a lot of great things about ourselves. And what we talked about is that by the time we are 18 years old, we've been told so many times, like an average of 140,000 times, of what is not possible for us, that we end up going through life just looking at the negative side of everything, talking ourselves out of what is possible for us, telling ourselves what is not possible for us. And by the way, all of that ties to what we went through in the first week in the law of attraction, because the things that we think about all day, every day, the stories we tell ourselves all day, every day, end up manifesting into the lives we've created. So today I want to spend some time talking about the book Psycho-Cybernetics. This is an old book by Maxwell Maltz. Dr. Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and after many years of doing plastic and cosmetic surgery on people, he began to notice something really strange. What he noticed is that people would come to him and they would have like what they felt was disfigurement on their face. So they had like a really big nose, or there was something about them that they felt disfigured outside of themselves. And they would come to him because they felt that if they had this disfigurement corrected, that they would be able to have an incredible life, that they'd be able to move past that disfigurement to create an amazing life. And what Maltz realized is that sometimes that did work. Sometimes you could change the outside, what an outside person looks like, and then they adopt that new outside, that exterior, into their being, and they have changes on the outside world, and they go out and achieve their dreams. But just as often, he said, what would happen is he would do the surgery, and that person's life would not change at all. So in other words, say they wanted to get their nose changed because they felt that they couldn't attract a great partner. He said so often these people would have these surgeries done and there would be zero change in their lives. And what Maltz realized is that it does not matter at all what you look like on the outside. It is who you believe yourself to be on the inside that matters. So he would do a cosmetic surgery, but if that person did not change at all, if their self-image did not change, that person just threw their money out the window for that surgery. And he said in the alternative, there's no need for surgery at all. He said that it is possible for somebody to change who they are on the inside to create the life they want. So he said basically what he realized is that our future, for every single one of us listening, our future is controlled by a mental blueprint that we have inside our subconscious mind, and it dictates where we think we belong. So we have each created a blueprint in our heads of who we are as human beings, and then we become that person in the outside world. So many of you are taking this program because you want to bust out of the past chains of your results. So many people taking this class are doing it because you've always been a $2 million a year producing agent and you want to be a $10 million producing agent. Well, what Dr. Maltz would say is nothing is going to work for you. Going out buying Zillow leads, preparing a business plan, none of that is going to work for you until you change your perception of who you are in your head. Because the reason you've been doing $2 million a year in business for the last 10 years is because in your own head, you're a $2 million producing agent. So to bust out of the chains of your past results, whether it's in business or life, personal relationships, you have to become a different person in your head first, which is no different than what we've been saying for the last 3 programs, but just saying it in different ways. So if you want to get more clients and make more money, then you need to expand your self-image before you can have them. Trying to achieve without expanding your self-image doesn't lead to a lasting positive change. And we've talked about this multiple times in the last several weeks, that why is it that the self-help area of the bookstore continues to expand? Because if self-help books worked, then why do we need to keep adding self-help books? And if you look at the bookstore, it's like a quarter of most bookstores, this expanding self-help section. The reason is because none of that matters. None of those self-help books matter until you can first change your perception of who you are in your own head. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So that self-image, the individual's mental and spiritual concept of picture of himself, is the real key to personality and behavior. The self-image is the key to human personality and human behavior. If you change your self-image, then you change the personality and the behavior. Because your self-image dictates how you show up, how you arrive every day into a new day. Your self-image says how you arrive at every appointment. Your self-image says how you deal with challenge on a daily basis. Your self-image dictates your schedule on a daily basis. Your self-image dictates whether you go to the gym every morning. Your self-image dictates whether you read a lot of books. Who you believe yourself to be dictates every piece of your personality. So if we can tweak the self-image slightly, we can tweak the results that you're having in the exterior world outside of your subconscious mind. Self-image sets the boundaries of individual accomplishment. It defines what you can and cannot do. I shared a story last week that I said in 2017 I ran the Boston Marathon. Basically, I had 8 weeks to train for a marathon after going several months without running at all. And the only possible way to be able to run a marathon with 8 weeks training is in your own head. You have to become a marathoner first. So for me, what I did at that time is I said, okay, how would I have to think about myself in order for me to run a marathon in 8 weeks and to train for a marathon? Like in my own head, I had to become a marathoner in my own head before I'd ever be able to become a marathoner in the exterior world. If you can expand your self-image, so this is the idea that if you can expand in your head who you are, if you could believe that you are capable of so much more than where you are right now, you can expand the area of possibility for your life. So until you expand the way that you think about yourself, until you can expand that, it's going to be really difficult for you to expand other areas of your life. The development of an adequate, realistic self-image will imbue an individual with new capabilities, new talents, and literally turn failure into success. So some of the examples that I've shared on this is, for many years, I've said to about myself to myself that in my own head, I am not a salesperson, that I am not outgoing, I am shy, I am not good at networking events. And by really questioning that belief about myself over the past several years, what I've realized is all of that was fake. All of it, everything I was saying about myself, being an introvert, being shy, not being great at networking events, like that I'm not a great salesperson, that was just like stuff planted into myself, probably from a very young age. But when I really sat back and began questioning my own self-image and the stuff I say about myself, I began to realize that it was all fake. The reason that it matters is for me at least, for when building a business, how you arrive at a networking event, how you arrive when you're going on a client appointment, all of that, the way you show up in life has a great deal to do with how you feel about yourself inside. So yesterday I posted something on Facebook because I'm working with a client who's buying at the new Four Seasons in Boston. So working with one of our agents who's working with a client who's buying at the new Four Seasons, a $2.5 million property. And so I went and met with the customer and the other real estate agent. And I would say if I had to do that 10 years ago, I would have had so many doubts about myself showing up to that appointment that I don't think I could have effectively even closed the transaction, because my mindset would have been like, I don't deserve to be here. I have no business working with a $2.5 million client. They're going to know when they talk to me that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm shy. I'm not a great salesperson. That's a very different mindset and self-image than where I am today, that I went on that appointment and I'm like, I'm as good or maybe even more experienced than everybody else in the room or at that table. The point is that I showed up in a capacity in my own head that I could definitely close that transaction. But that's in your head first, because what I could tell you is we absolutely at our company have agents that they would not have been able to show up. That's not to say that they're not super qualified. I have tons of agents that would have been totally 100% super qualified to show up and talk to the client, talk to the other real estate agent, show them the property. I'd say every agent in our company is totally qualified to do that. But you have to show up with the appropriate mindset in order to know that you deserve that business, that you're as good as anybody sitting at the table. But it all comes down to mindset first, because you will always live up to. If you walk into an appointment knowing that you're as good as every other person at that table, that you're a great salesperson, that you're outgoing, that people are lucky to have you on their side when they're doing a real estate transaction, that's a very different human being than somebody that shows up to the table doubting their own ability because they don't feel like they deserve that business, or they don't think they can hold their own at a $2.5 million purchase appointment. So you have to expand your self-image in order to expand what is possible for you. So the world is full of examples of people who have chronically failed in life, who have become super successful. F students have become straight A pupils. Shy, inhibited people have become outgoing just by changing their thoughts about themselves. That's how simple it is. It is all about, this entire series, by the way, is all about questioning your beliefs about what you believe about yourself, learning the power to manifest what you actually want, because we know our minds control what happens on the outside world, and having positive, happy conversations with ourselves about who we are all day, every day, rather than negative ones. So it goes back to like all the other self-help books. None of that matters. What matters more than any of that is who is the person reading the self-help book. Because if you can't change the self-image of who you are, you're never going to be able to work on everything else. All of us, 100% of us, carry around this mental blueprint of ourselves. This is the conception of who we believe ourselves to be. It has been built up from our own beliefs about ourselves. Most beliefs about ourselves are unconsciously formed by past experiences, our success or failures, and the way other people have reacted to us since childhood. So what happens throughout life is 100% you're going to have failures. If you're going after a big dream, which I hope you are, you're 100% going to have failures. What you will begin to realize as you begin working on mindset is that a failure is not who you are. So the difference between how people handle failure, all of that plays into the self-image of who we are. So definitely we have failures. I've had failures this week in my own business. I let it go. I look at a failure as an opportunity to learn better for the next time. I don't look at failure as who I am. But many people do internalize failure to a point that that becomes part of their self-image. That is who they are, and they internalize failure so much that they become a person that is most likely going to fail at everything they do, because to themselves, in their own head, they are a failure. So one of the pieces that we'll talk about is like you have to become a person that realizes that you're going to have wins in life, you're going to have failures in life. Concentrate on the wins. What I always say, the wins in your life are proof that you could be, do, and have anything in the world you want. And I've said that multiple times throughout the last 4 weeks. You could be, do, and have anything in the world you want. Literally anything. If there's a cap of what you think is possible for you, it's fake. You put that cap there for whatever reason. It's 100% fake. You could be, do, and have anything in the world you want. So throughout life, you're going to have little wins. Little positive wins where you're going to say to yourself, wow, I can't believe I just pulled that off. Those little wins are your proof that you could be, do, and have anything in the world you want. And the failures are just lessons. So the failures are just not a part of you. It's not who you are. It is something that happened that will teach you how to be better next time. We mentally construct a self or a picture of self. Once a belief about ourselves goes into this picture we have of ourselves, it becomes true as far as we are concerned. We do not question the validity, but we proceed to act upon it just as if it were true. So this entire program, the last several weeks that we've been meeting, is all about questioning every thought you have. Question everything. Question who you believe yourself to be. Question why you believe yourself to be that person. Like I said, I questioned after like decades of telling myself that I'm shy, I'm an introvert, I'm not good with people. Because what we said last week is, for all those negative thoughts I had about myself, because that was like my self-image, I would always subconsciously look for proof of that belief about myself, because it was part of my self-image. But when I stepped back for a moment and really questioned it, I realized I'm not that shy. I've been on stages with tens of thousands of people in a crowd. I go to networking events literally probably an average of 3 or 4 times per week. And I began questioning my belief about myself that I'm a shy introvert, and I realized I am not a shy introvert at all. So you have to really start digging deep and like write out what your beliefs about yourself are, because what we started today's class with is we said that the self-image is the area of possibility for you. So if you want to create a bigger life for yourself, if you have bigger dreams you want to create, you're going to have to expand the self-image. So you have to start like digging deep and figuring out what are these beliefs I have about myself, and then try to dig back where they come from, and then you have to go and try to disprove them. So definitely I can find instances where I can prove that I'm a shy introvert. But when I started questioning it, I realized I could find way more examples of instances that I would consider myself more of an outgoing extrovert person. So start digging into your beliefs. All of your actions, your feelings, your behaviors, even your abilities are always consistent with your self-image. You will always act like the sort of person you conceive yourself to be. So you want to change your business, your relationships, your life, you have to change who you conceive yourself to be to do that. The man who considers himself a failure will absolutely 100% always find himself failing, because your subconscious mind is going to always find proof. Your subconscious has this image of who you are, and the subconscious is going to find little pieces of proof about that every day, so that you know that that is who I am. Your subconscious is not going to be the one that steps out and says, wait a minute, is that even really true? And where did that idea come from? Your conscious mind has to be the one to question that. The man who conceives himself to be a victim of injustice, one who is meant to suffer, will find circumstances to verify his own opinions about himself. So we end up in this vicious circle. The self-image is a premise, it is a base, it is a foundation upon which your entire personality, your behavior, and even your circumstances are built. Because of this, our experiences seem to verify and thereby strengthen our self-images. It is a vicious cycle. What I am 100% going to tell you is that when you change your self-image, your personality changes too. So your self-image is 100% tied to the personality that gets sent out into the outside world. A kid who considers himself a failure will show up every day to every meeting he has, to every interaction he has as a failure, because that's how he feels in his own head. The kid who considers himself a failure is always going to look for the F on his report card. He's not going to look at the little silver linings that he's going to see on the report card too if he looked, because on that report card there's probably proof that he's capable of being, doing, and having anything in the world he wants. Somewhere on the report card there's an A. There's something that shows he shines as a human being. But the kid is always going to look at, if he believes himself to be a failure, he's going to focus on the F and he's going to let the other stuff go, not even notice it. He'll ignore the A's as a fluke. He'll say, oh, it's a fluke, I got an A in English. And will feel that he has proven himself a failure once again by just concentrating on the F's. We constantly seek proof of who we believe ourselves to be. The good news is we could change our self-image. If that F student were to be convinced that he was always an A student, he would become an A student to match his belief about himself. So think of all the things you tell yourself about yourself. I'm a bad speller. I can't do math. I'm a failure. I'm an introvert. I am not a salesperson. I am always late. I am not good with numbers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Think about all the things you tell yourself about yourself, and it's simply not true. So let's talk about where the word psycho-cybernetics came from. So basically what Maxwell Maltz says is that we have this system, almost like a robotic system, that is implanted in each of us. The creative mechanism within you is not personal, it's impersonal. It will work automatically and impersonally to achieve goals of success and happiness, or unhappiness and failure, depending on the goals that you set for yourself. If you present it with a success goal, it will function as a success mechanism. If you present it with a negative goal, it operates just as impersonally and just as faithfully as a failure mechanism. So whatever goals you put into your own head, like if you say to yourself, I'm a failure, you're going to absolutely create failures because of what you've implanted into yourself already. So we all have goals. Whether we intentionally articulate them or not, we all have a goal that we put into our system. The brain and nervous systems are continually leading us in the direction of images we think about consciously, or images that are so much part of us that we are led towards them on autopilot. So I've mentioned this in the past, that we all have these goals, like the things that we think about, and there are people in the world that, and I know that every single person here has one of these people in their lives that, like, their goal is to suffer. Like, they feel themselves, they always revert back to suffering. Now, this is not necessarily anything that they consciously do, but it's like they always, every time you talk to them, they're focusing on the suffering and the bad stuff that always happens to them, and they concentrate on how they are a victim of the world. And interestingly, people like that, like subconsciously, they are comfortable in their suffering. Like, that makes them feel human, is that suffering. By the way, all of that can be changed too, if you can catch it, because you might be the person that always feels most comfortable in your own suffering. All of that can be changed. But the reason I say it is because the simplicity of this entire book, the Psycho-Cybernetics, the simplicity of this entire book is that whoever you believe yourself to be, like if you believe yourself to be a victim, you will find yourself suffering most days because you've implanted that seed into your head. And so your system, the automatic system that goes to work like a robot, is going to seek out more opportunities for you to suffer because it believes you want to suffer. So the simplicity of the program is that if you put in new goals, like happy goals, to have a great relationship, to build an incredible business, to have the life you want, and you concentrate on those positive things and happiness every single day, you're gonna create all of that. I shared when I was doing the first version of this class, which I do Saturday mornings, I was talking about a developer who I had recently interviewed. He's one of the biggest developers in Boston, and he has had all kinds of tragedy happen in his life. And I had talked about, when I asked him, like, how do you get past the hard days, the hardest days of your life? And because, like, he had a younger brother who overcame all kinds of huge challenges in his life only to die in a car accident in his 20s. So, like, that makes you question when your best friend, your little brother, passes away in a car accident after overcoming all kinds of challenges. A lot of people would let that whole negative experience, like, dictate who they are as a human being for the rest of their lives, and they would suffer for the rest of their lives. And so I said to this gentleman, Jay, I said, on your worst days, how do you overcome, like, the challenges of that day? And he says, I wake up so grateful every day that these are the challenges that I have in my life, because no matter what challenge I'm facing on a daily basis, there's worse things in the world. And he's like, I wake up with gratitude every day. The point is, this developer, Jay, has a mindset that he's not a victim, that he's in control of his life. And so because he has that mindset, he has created a substantial empire for himself in business and in life. Our self-image sets the boundaries for us. We said it sets the areas of what is possible. If we feed info and data into our creative mechanism to the effect that we ourselves are unworthy or inferior or undeserving or incapable, this data is processed and acted on as is any other data in giving us an answer in the form of objective experiences. So think about that, because when you start examining your beliefs about yourself, if you have any of these, that sometimes you don't feel like you're worthy of working with a $2 million buyer, for example, or that you are inferior to the people that you work with every day. If you have feelings of unworthiness, inferiority, that you're undeserving, that you're not capable, you're going to show up very different in your life every day than somebody who has those opposite beliefs, that they are worthy, that they are better than or equal to other people, that they are deserving, that they are capable. These are things that are implanted into us. So I want to talk for a second about the fact that, so what Maxwell Maltz said, the reason he called the book Psycho-Cybernetics is because his whole idea was like, you just implant the thoughts and the rest of it will just go to work for you. So it's like a robot within you that is going to work towards the goals that you have implanted into yourself. And this happens automatically whether you believe it or not. And the story I shared on Saturday when I was doing this class is each week we do a video series called Featured Agent Friday. And it is a series where we feature one of our real estate agents. We do 2 series of the program. So every time we interview the agents, we do one that is for our people, where they share what they're doing in their business or their life to be successful. And then we do one for the consumers, so that agent can go share it with their customer base. Well, the one that we released last week was Dan O'Connell. Dan O'Connell is our highest producing real estate agent. He does about $60 million in business each year. Yes, he has a team, but still 40 million of the business is him. So he does a remarkable amount of real estate business as an agent. Interestingly, he's been on some of these classes and webinars, the Change Your Mind, Change Your Life series. He's been on some of these webinars, and he called me one day and he's like, it's interesting, but he's like, honestly, I don't really buy into anything that you're saying. So like when I did the first class on manifestation and stuff like that, he's like, you know what, I don't really buy into it. He's like, I think it's good that you're teaching people mindset, but I don't buy into it. Well, last Friday we released his Featured Agent Friday video. And Dan O'Connell was talking about, in that video, how when he first got into the business, let's say 15 or 20 years ago, that he went out each month, he would print out a list of the top agents throughout the marketplace. And then he would reach out to the top agents who were doing 20 or 30 or 40 or $50 million in business. And he would reach out to them and ask them how they achieved their big goal. So he'd take them out for coffee and he would sit with the best real estate agents in the market and ask them how they prospected, how they got new business, how they marketed themselves, how they built their team. And Dan did this for several years. And I asked him in the video, like, what is the one thing you learned from doing all that? And Dan O'Connell said, what I learned from doing all that is that they're no different than me. They're 100% no different than me. And that if they could do it, I could do it. So, sounds small. Most people would not have even caught this in the video, but what I will say is this is psycho-cybernetics at its best. Dan O'Connell, I said, Dan, you just proved the psycho-cybernetics works, because the reason Dan O'Connell is a $60 million producing agent is because of that seed that he implanted in himself 20 years ago. Because here's the truth of what would have happened with most real estate agents. all of us as real estate professionals or entrepreneurs, what's crazy is that we compare ourselves to other human beings. And when we compare ourselves to other human beings, first of all, it's completely 100% arbitrary. Like, we're comparing ourselves to another snowflake. So you can't have one snowflake compare itself to another snowflake. They're both so individual, you can't compare it. So the point is, Dan O'Connell could have gone on those appointments 20 years ago with top real estate agents in his marketplace. And he absolutely 100% could have implanted a seed within himself that he could not be a $60 million agent because he didn't have a master's degree. He didn't have a massive network of people who wanted to buy real estate from him. He didn't have a bag of money to invest in his real estate business. So many years ago, as he's sitting with these other real estate agents, learning from the best in the business at that time, there's two potential paths or two seeds that he could have implanted in himself. The one seed is that they did all these things in their business, but that's not possible for me because of this, this, and this. But in the alternative, Dan O'Connell planted a different seed within himself 20 years ago. And the seed he implanted in himself from doing those interviews with people is that if they could do it, I could do it. He specifically says in the video, he's like, they put their pants on every morning, one leg at a time, just like I do. So what I learned from doing those interviews is that if they could do it, I could do it. So Dan O'Connell proved that psycho-cybernetics, 100%, he planted a seed within himself, and today it is blooming with $60 million in business. If you can remember things, if you can worry about things, if you could tie your shoe, these are all examples of the fact that you could succeed. Because if you can simply remember to create a habit of planting good seeds in your head, then you can be, do, and have anything, because you can create anything, because this system, this robotic system within us is going to just work without any great deal of effort on our part. All we have to do is notice the thoughts going on in our heads. Through creative mental picturing, you can form a new automatic reaction patterns by acting out and acting as if you've already created the life you want. Interestingly, we've talked about this in past programs as well, animals have a success mechanism too. Their success mechanism is to live, eat, hunt, fight. So what's interesting about that is, if a squirrel runs by a pile of nuts on its daily jog in the morning, the squirrel's gonna stop, it's gonna pick up the nuts, it's gonna go hide the nuts in a particular place, and then it's going to later on come back and when it needs the nuts, dig them back up. Because a squirrel, like most animals, their sole function is to live. So it knows how to eat, store food, hunt, fight. So that's the way that the cybernetic system within an animal works. That it is going to automatically work towards living every single day. Humans are slightly different. Yeah, we have built within us we want to live as well, but we also have the ability to create whatever goal we want. So the difference between us and animals is animals have one goal that they work towards every day, living. With human beings, the success mechanism is the same in that our internal success mechanism is going to work towards the goal regardless, just like when Dan O'Connell implanted this seed within himself that he could do anything if they could do anything. The difference with humans is that we decide what the goal is. So all we have to do is implant ourselves with the right goal, then your life will manifest that. And I want to just go back to the Dan O'Connell video for a minute, because I want you to think about what his life would look like if 20 years ago, while interviewing those high-producing agents, he thought to himself, I could not do what they do because of this, this, and this. Like, where would he be today? There's a good chance he might not even be in the real estate business at all because of his self-image stopping him or limiting the boundaries of what was possible for him. But because he went out and interviewed those people, he expanded his self-image by watching those people, and he expanded the possibility for himself. Your success mechanism, your brain and your nervous system are a goal-striving mechanism. They automatically guide you in the correct direction to achieve your goals. So cybernetics is a Greek word that means the steersman. Man has an internal machine that it uses to achieve goals. So all we have to do is work on what goals are we going to implant in ourselves through our thoughts, and your internal success mechanism will work towards achieving those goals. Our success mechanism can tap into a lifetime worth of information and experiences stored in our brains, in addition to the universal consciousness of everything, everywhere. I'm going to spend some time on this on week 5, but not only does, like, internal to you, you have so much information, a lifetime of information where you've achieved great things that you might not even be focusing on because you're trying to prove who you are subconsciously to yourself. What I want to tell you is that when you start acting as if or believing something else about yourself or going after a big goal, don't worry about how you're going to get there. Many people make the mistake of interfering with their success mechanism by demanding a how before a goal is clearly established. After you've formed a mental image of a goal you seek to create, the how will show up. You must let it work rather than make it work. We as human beings like to control everything. But if you think about Dan O'Connell, he could have 20 years ago come up with 20 million reasons as to why he could never be a $60 million producer, because at the time there was a lot of evidence that the most he was capable of was $2 million a year in sales. But he still had this seed that he planted in himself that if they could do it, I can do it. And he didn't worry about how it was going to happen. Just let the universe handle it. Imagination plays a far more important role than most of us realize. Some use their imagination instructively, others use it destructively. So your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience. In either case, it reacts automatically to information that you give it. The reason I even say this is because we worry about stuff. So if you have something that you worry about constantly, you are going to create that in the outside world. Like, if you are constantly worried or fearful, that is going to manifest into the outside world because your brain doesn't know that that is not actually happening in your life. Think about hypnosis for a second. Hypnosis is when a subject is convinced that he is deaf. He behaves as if he's deaf. When he believes he is insensitive to pain, he can go through a surgery without anesthesia. Like, there are crazy stories. If you Google people going under hypnosis, you will see the craziest stories. People who in a crowded restaurant will behave like a chicken because they've been hypnotized into believing that they're a chicken. But the whole idea of it is that if somebody through hypnosis is implanted with a belief about themselves, then that belief will come out in the outside world. So the way that we connect that to our day-to-day lives is that in order to create the life you want, you're going to have to start believing something else about yourself, because your old beliefs and thought patterns and your old self-image got you to where you are today. If you're on this class today, that's because you want something more and different and better. So it starts with different thoughts about yourself, different beliefs about yourself, and a new and different self-image. So back to hypnosis. People can get hypnotized either negatively or positively in their own lives. The most fascinating thing about this is that, like, the actual, so they have examples of people who are hypnotized into believing that they can like lift great weight, for example, like weightlifters, and those people can actually lift it. So it has less to do with somebody's muscle than it does their mindset, like just their belief that they can be the person that can lift something heavy. They can lift something heavy. But that's the power of our subconscious mind, that it is so powerful that when we believe something to be true, we can make it happen in unbelievable ways. There's stories in the book of people who went through surgeries with no anesthesia because the person was hypnotized into believing that they were not sensitive to pain. So think about that. If you could be hypnotized into believing that you can't feel pain when somebody puts a knife in you, and you can actually go through a surgery with zero pain, then isn't it possible that you could implant in yourself a belief that you could be, do, or have anything in the world? That you could be a luxury agent doing $150 million a year in business? Like, all of it, you can implant in yourself literally any belief. You have certain mental images of yourself, your world, and the people around you, and you behave as though these images are the absolute truth. So think about that. Like, whether the mental image you have is true or not, the robot inside you is working towards making it true on the outside world. There are ways that you can improve your mental images, by the way. So some of the ways you can improve your mental images: role playing, mental rehearsal. So let's say that you have to get up in front of a big group of people and do a speech next week. There's two things you can do. You can worry about it and think in your head of the 30 things that could go wrong while you're on the stage, and or you could mentally rehearse what's going to happen and how you're going to do such a great job. Like, mentally rehearsing will more likely create the result that you want, and then you can keep practicing. To create success in life, you have to imagine yourself to be the person who you want to be. Conrad Hilton imagined himself operating a hotel long before he owned one. As a kid, he practiced running a hotel. I did an interview with Greg Hill, the Hillman, a 29-year veteran of WAAF, a big radio station in Boston, and it's awesome hearing his story, only because, like Dan O'Connell, he doesn't believe any of this stuff. He's like, I'm not into the law of attraction and manifestation and mindset. So off the cuff, I was interviewing him about how he even decided he was going to become a DJ. And he said, oh, that's easy. When I was in high school, I decided I wanted to be a DJ because I was so passionate about it. And so I set up a DJ booth within my garage, and every day I would host my own show with nobody listening. And he's like, I did it every day for years and years. My parents would tell me I have to mow the lawn, and I'd say I can't do it until 4 o'clock. That's when my show gets out. And he's like, because I was so committed, I'd go in every day, and I believed myself to be running my own show, my own radio show. And here he is years later, and he's a 29-year veteran of one of the most popular radio shows in Boston. So again, just like Dan O'Connell, Greg Hill does not believe in psycho-cybernetics, but the whole point is you don't have to believe it. This mechanism within you, this robot within you that's working towards whatever thing you're thinking about or whatever self-image you've built for yourself, it's happening whether you believe it or not. When you see a thing clearly in your mind, the creative success mechanism within you takes over and does the job much better than you do by conscious effort. I said it a few minutes ago. You can't worry about how stuff's going to happen. Stop being a control freak. Let it go. Just believe that if you concentrate on being the person who can accomplish this big goal, being that person in your own head every day, the creative success mechanism will be working for you towards that goal. So picture what you want in your life. Mentally picture the desired end result. This will start bringing the end result towards you simultaneously while you're working towards the goal. So yeah, you get to wake up and go to work every day, but also mentally picturing it every single day, living in your own head as if you've already accomplished the goal. That, coupled with you showing up every day and making little steps towards what your goal is, eventually the two become a magnet and you create great things. I want you to think about who is the real you. Most of us underrate ourselves, we shortchange ourselves, we sell ourselves short. I want you guys to start de-hypnotizing yourself. Every human being is hypnotized to some extent, either by ideas he has uncritically accepted from others or ideas he has repeated to himself and has accepted as true. What are you accepting as true about yourself? I told you some of mine that I accepted as true that I'm shy and not a great salesman and an introvert. I've questioned those beliefs over the last 5 or so years, and I now don't believe any of those things about myself. And because that new belief is the opposite of my old belief, I show up differently to my daily business. Within you, you have the ability and the power to do whatever you need to do to be happy and successful. Our feelings of inferiority come from judging ourselves, not against our own norms, but against some other individual's norm. It's our feeling of inferiority against others that makes us inferior. It's not actual inferiority. So all the point there is that we judge ourselves against random people all day, every day. So that is the people in our lives. We judge ourselves from supermodels on TV. We judge ourselves like against random people all the time. And so we develop throughout life this feeling of inferiority, and it is not actual inferiority that we have. I said a few minutes ago, or I said at the beginning of this program, that I think that $2.5 million client who's buying at the new Four Seasons in Boston, I think we have 450 agents that could absolutely 100%, like they've got everything it takes to close that deal. A small percentage actually believe they have what it takes, and it is believing that they have what it takes that enables them to close the deal. So you gotta stop comparing yourself to random people and never believe, unless you want to do something positive, like Dan O'Connell looked and said, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it. One of the things that I've gotten from going out and interviewing now more than 450 entrepreneurs and world changers and celebrities, I feel the same way Dan felt about those real estate agents. I believe that absolutely positively, no question in my mind, we're building the #1 real estate brand in New England. We'll get there in the next 5 years. I have interviewed the coolest, most amazing business leaders in the world, and when I look at them, I say, you know what, they can do it, I could totally do it. So if you're gonna compare yourself to anyone, anytime, ever, do it in a manner that you know, because that human being has done it, it's capable for you. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Never look at somebody else and say it's not possible for me because I don't have my MBA, I don't have rich friends, I don't have a bag of money. Get rid of all of that. Never, ever compare yourself to another person. You don't have to worry about the how you're going to get to where you are. You got to stop comparing yourself unless it's in a positive way for implanting those good seeds. You as a personality are not in competition with any other personality. There's no other person on earth like you. You are your own class. Textbook inferiority is set up a norm, make someone compare themselves against that norm. Well, there is no norm in humanity. Self-realization is gained by a simple belief in one's own uniqueness as a human being, a sense of deep and wide awareness of all people and all things. The best way to break a habit is to form a new mental image of the desired end result and to practice reaching towards that goal every single day. I said it earlier, our errors, our mistakes, our failures, our humiliations, those are just necessary steps in a learning process. Those are stepping stones. They were meant to be a means to an end, and they are not an end in and of themselves. Just because you've failed multiple times in life doesn't make you a failure. That has nothing to do with who you are as a human being. They are stepping stones on the road of life to get where you want to go. If we consciously dwell on the error or consciously feel guilty about the error and keep berating ourselves because of it, then unwittingly the error or failure itself becomes the goal because that's what we're thinking about all day, every day. And that is what gets unconsciously held in our imagination so that our success mechanism begins to work against us. Examine your beliefs about yourself. Your feelings and behaviors spring from a belief. Why do you believe you cannot do something? Is there a rational reason for the belief? Could you be mistaken about the belief? Would you believe the story if you had heard that story being said about someone else? Why should you continue to act and feel as if whatever you believe is true if it really isn't true at all? You've got to start digging down and figuring out what those beliefs are. Instead of always saying to yourself, I can't do it, what I want you to start looking at every single day is, why not me? If Dan O'Connell could do $60 million in business, why not me? What you will find is that there's no good reason at all. You could be and do and have anything in the world you want. Just like Dan O'Connell has done. You have to be a truth seeker for your own life. This is the most important role you will play in your own life moving forward. You need to be a truth seeker. Who are you as a human being? Why do you believe what you believe? And can you start digging up some of those unproductive beliefs you have about yourself and planting new, more productive beliefs that will help you accomplish your goal? It is the task of your rational thought to inform your machine with true facts concerning the environment, to know the truth, to form correct evaluations, estimations, and opinions. In this connection, most of us are prone to underestimate ourselves and overestimate the nature of the difficulty facing us. Relax and just let your success mechanism work for you. You've probably heard about the phenomenon. The masters of the past and the present have always found their specific something when they were not actively engaged in it. They spent hours, days, or years working on a problem, figuring out everything they could, gathering knowledge, but they came to the solution when they were not engaged in it. That's when their creative mechanism did the job. This happened to Einstein. Albert Einstein worked for 10 long years on the problem of general relativity until one evening he decided to just give up on it. He went to bed early, and when he woke up, the solution came to him suddenly when he was not engaged in the topic anymore. So I will go back to this for part 5 of our program next week, where we're going to spend that entire program talking about action steps you can take to develop a better self-image, a different mindset, and have better conversations with yourself. But one of the big things we'll say is to step back and let the universe do its work. Relax, meditate, let stuff come into you instead of trying to control the thoughts and what's happening on a daily basis. Let your creative mechanism work. You gather the knowledge. All you have to do is imagine your desired end result, but leave the main work to your subconscious. Therefore, you need to relax from time to time. Let the mechanism work for you. Try to implement the 5 rules. These 5 rules, which are don't worry about stuff. Because these things, like worry, holds back from what is capable of you. Respond to just the present moment. Don't worry about the past. Don't focus or worry about the future. Respond to the present. Do only one thing at a time. Sleep on it. Let the universe and your consciousness, subconsciousness work. And then relax while you work. Don't try to force an end result. Also, acquire the habit of happiness, a state of mind in which our thinking is pleasant a good share of the time. We think better, perform better, feel better, and are healthier when we are happy. By the way, happiness is just a choice. So many of us are unhappy because we put a what if or a future if on our happiness. Like, I would be happy if I accomplished this. I'd be happy if I was successful and healthy. I would be happy if I had a lot of money. I'd be happy if I was on vacation. I'd be happy if I had a great body. Life is living happy day in and day out while you achieve all these great things that you're working towards. Being happy has nothing to do with whether we have something or not. Being happy has nothing to do with what's happening. Being happy has nothing to do with what you've achieved. Being happy has to do with habit. Being happy is just a habit that you form. Happiness is a mental habit, a mental attitude, and if it is not learned and practiced in the present, it will never be experienced. So your next steps, as we are at the end of our 1-hour program, is I want you to start with imagination. Acquire the habit of happiness and dehypnotize yourself from these false beliefs that make up who you are, your self-image. Remember, you're going to have mistakes along the way, but those are just stepping stones. The mistakes cannot be implanted as part of who you are as a human being. You are not a failure. Instead, what I want you to look for is I want you to start listing out all the ways that are all the proof that you have in your life that you can be, do, and have anything. Because I promise you, when you look closely, you have some absolute proof that you've accomplished some great things, even when the tide was against you. All masters have failed many times, but they learn from them and failed better the next time, and again better the next time. To learn from mistakes, you need to make mistakes. The greatest mistake a man can make is to be afraid of making one. Remember, you are not your mistakes. You can learn from mistakes and then forget about them. That's how you will improve anything. So again, the 5 books which this entire 5-week program has been focused on are all laid out here. Today specifically, we spent a great deal of time focusing on psycho-cybernetics and the great work of Maxwell Maltz, our plastic surgeon, who realized that, hey, wait a minute, just because you alter stuff on the outside doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change anything on the inside. And what really matters when it comes to accomplishing your dreams and your big goals is changing who you are and what you believe about yourself and creating that new self-image. So thank you for joining me today for Change Your Mind, Change Your Life. Have a great day.